Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Quest for Quarters. On episodes like these, I take you through underrated budget cards that you should be considering when you're building your decks. For these episodes, not only does every card have to be under $1, but they also need to be used in less than 4% of eligible decks on EDH Rec. This show and episodes like this one are possible because of viewers like you. So if you're looking for some easy ways to help support the show, make sure you like this episode and share it with friends. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Thank you to everyone who's already purchased our merchandise, it really does help support the channel. Another easy way to support this channel is by using our TCG Player affiliate links. So make sure that you're looking for those links in the description whenever you're buying a deck or just individual cards. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's first underrated Quest for Quarters card today is Keep Watch. Currently it's only 41 cents and sees play in just over 700 decks. It's an instant for 2 and a blue, and it says draw a card for each attacking creature. In my opinion, this card has a ton of upside and a very low floor. Drawing cards is crucial in Commander, and the difference between instant and sorcery speed is huge. 3 mana is a very small investment with the potential to draw a ton of cards. The best part of this card is that it doesn't specify who needs to be attacking or who they have to attack. So this can count your own attacking creatures or your opponents. And if one of your opponents is attacking another, you can still take advantage of that. You're probably getting your money's worth if just 3 creatures are attacking. But if you're playing against something like a tokens deck, you hit the jackpot. Being able to draw 10 plus cards at instant speed for just 3 mana is an insane amount of value. Now there's definitely a drawback to this card, so it doesn't fit into every single deck or every single meta. If your meta doesn't run a lot of creatures and your deck doesn't have many creatures either, then you're probably not going to run this. But still, I'd say for most metas, this is definitely one you should consider. The potential payoff for this card is absolutely absurd. So now let's look at some similar cards to compare this to. First up, there's Stroke of Genius, which currently sees play in over 6,000 decks. It costs X, 2 and a blue, and it says target player draws X cards. So with this card, you're determining how many cards you draw based off the amount of mana that you put into it. And like Keep Watch, this is at instant speed. For most decks, this is probably a more dependable draw spell, but you do have to invest a lot more into it. Let's say again that there are 3 attacking creatures for Keep Watch. In that situation, you're getting 3 mana for 3 cards. With Stroke of Genius, it would cost you 6 mana to get the same. And 6 mana for 3 cards is not very efficient. Again, Keep Watch is dependent on attackers, but there are other similar cards that are dependent too that are more used. A card like Biden of Thassa is one of those. It says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. And then by paying 1 and a blue and tapping it, creatures your opponents control attack this turn if able. So if you can keep getting your creatures through, this can draw you a ton of cards. This also stays on the board to provide value throughout the game. Keep Watch may be a one-shot effect, but it doesn't care who's attacking and it doesn't care if those creatures actually hit. And ironically, it can work very well with Biden of Thassa's ability. Another draw spell that can be extremely efficient is Treasure Cruise. It's a sorcery that draws you 3 cards for 8 mana, but it has Delve, so it usually just costs 1. Again, like Keep Watch, there's a requirement that needs to be met for this card to be effective. If you don't have cards in your graveyard, paying 8 mana to draw 3 cards is extremely inefficient. So people that put this in their decks either have a deck that's built around putting things into their graveyard, or they're just willing to work within that requirement. Early on, there's definitely a chance that this spell will just sit in their hand. The same is true for Keep Watch. I'm definitely not saying that Keep Watch is as good as Treasure Cruise, but there's definitely some decks that it's even better in. So let's go over some decks where Keep Watch can really shine. First up, there's the Locust God and Talrain, which both create a ton of tokens. Since you can pretty much guarantee you're going to be attacking with a ton of creatures, it can be extremely effective. It's especially effective in the Locust God because it creates you even more insects. Another deck where it's a great fit is something like Feldergriff. Feldergriff works to make hippos for an opponent, and then it forces that opponent to attack with those hippos. So essentially you're guaranteeing that there's going to be an opponent attacking with a ton of creatures. Again, Keep Watch can fit in a ton of decks though, and you really don't need that guarantee. There are plenty of Commander games where at least 3 creatures are going to be attacking in a turn. But definitely consider your deck and your meta when you're thinking about adding in Keep Watch. Again, it's a card that I think has a very low floor and an extremely high ceiling. But now let's move on to our second Quest for Quarters card today with Dictate of Karametra. Currently it's just 50 cents and sees play in 2,400 decks. It's an enchantment for 3 green with flash. It says whenever a player taps a land for mana, that player adds 1 mana to his or her mana pool of any type that land produced. So essentially this is a mana doubler for everyone. There's obviously a drawback to this in the fact that you're ramping your opponents as well. But this card having flash makes a huge difference. If it didn't have flash, you'd have to cast on your turn and you probably wouldn't have too much mana to do anything else. But because it has flash, you can cast it right before your turn and you can take full advantage of it first. This can come out of absolutely nowhere and can be game ending. For argument's sake, let's say that you just have 5 lands in play. Right before your turn, you cast this, and then on your next turn, you play your 6th land. You just went from having access to 5 mana to 12 mana in 1 turn. There are plenty of huge spells that you can cast that can set you ahead of your opponents. But let's take a look at some similar cards for comparison's sake. First up, there's Heartbeat of Spring, which is currently over $6. It's essentially the exact same thing as Dictative Karametra, but it doesn't have flash and it only costs 2 and a green. And not having flash is a huge difference, because essentially your opponents are going to get to take full advantage of this first. Now there are decks where this can still be very effective, but being able to ramp out of nowhere and to use that ramp first is huge. Next up, there's Caged Sun, which sees play in over 20,000 decks. When it comes into play, you choose a color, and then creatures you control the chosen color get +1/+1, and whenever a land's ability causes you to add 1 or more mana of the chosen color, add 1 additional mana of that color. So essentially this is a mana doubler for just you, but only on 1 color of mana. This can be especially effective for non-green monocolor decks since they usually don't have access to mana doublers. In multicolor decks though, this isn't going to completely double up your mana like Dictative Karametra, but it does have the upside of only affecting you. Now a personal mana doubler that does the same thing as Dictative Karametra is Zendikar Resurgent. It works for all of your lands regardless of what color they're producing. Now on top of that, it also draws you a card whenever you cast a creature spell, but it does cost 2 more than Dictate. Although this only benefits you, it does have the downside of costing 7 and not having flash. Because of this, you're pretty much going to have to cast it on your turn and put a big target on your back. Then you have to hope it survives 1 full turn around the table to take advantage of it. Don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic card, but in some situations the element of surprise is better. Your opponents will have more opportunity to respond to something like this, but won't have as much time with Dictative Karametra. But now let's take a look at some decks that might be a good fit for this. Krufix, God of Horizons can be a fantastic spot for this. It allows you to essentially bank your mana so you can always take full advantage of all the mana you can produce. Another deck where this can come in huge is Roshin Meanderer. In that deck, you're looking to cast X spells for as much as you can. So casting Dictative Karametra before your turn can just give you the amount of mana that you need to win. And if you're playing with a group hug strategy like something like Kanaros and Tiro, this can work too. But instead of group hug, you can also play Kanaros and Tiro as a politics deck where it works as well. If you want to learn more about what a politics deck is, check out this link here. Our third underrated Quest Recorders card today is Star Compass. Currently it's 75 cents and sees play in just 2% of decks. It's an artifact that costs 2 and it enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it to add to your mana pool 1 mana of any color that a basic land you control could produce. I've mentioned this on plenty of episodes, but mana rocks that cost 2 are much more valuable than mana rocks that cost 3. The earlier that you can ramp, the better. And Star Compass is early ramp that can give you any of your colors if you're set up correctly. Now this mana rock is limited to only producing mana that your basic lands can produce. So if you need a certain color, it can't produce that for you until you have that basic land. If you use a ton of non-basics in your deck, this card probably isn't for you. As a budget builder, my decks tend to run a good amount of basic lands. And because of that, Star Compass is a fantastic mana rock for me. But let's look at some similar mana rocks to compare this to. First up, there's probably the most popular mana rock at 2 mana with Felwar Stone. It's currently seeing play in 14% of all decks. It costs 2 and it can tap to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. Unlike Star Compass, this comes into play untapped, which is a big difference. On top of that, unless you're playing against 3 colorless decks, this can always tap for mana. And even early on, a good amount of the time, it's probably going to have the colors that you need. Now, Star Compass is no Felwar Stone, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good mana rock in its own right. Next, let's take a look at Fire Diamond, which like Star Compass, also costs 2 and enters the battlefield tapped. Unlike Star Compass though, it just always taps for a red. So Star Compass may have a lower floor, but it also has a higher ceiling than Fire Diamond. In a multicolored deck, it can't guarantee that it's going to tap for the color that you want, but neither can Fire Diamond. And Star Compass has the potential to tap for any color that you need, whereas Fire Diamond and all the diamonds in the cycle are limited to just their color. A better version of the diamonds is Cold Steel Heart. It costs 2, enters the battlefield tapped, and when it comes into play, you choose a color. It then can tap to add 1 mana of the chosen color. So this card might be more flexible than a diamond, but Star Compass still has a higher ceiling. Now Cold Steel Heart will still be more consistent early in the game though. It can help you fix your mana for the color that you're missing. I definitely think that Cold Steel Heart is really underplayed as well. But Star Compass can still be effective early and is going to be more effective late. Again, make sure you keep in mind though that if you're not running a good amount of basic lands, you might not be able to use Star Compass. But let's take a look into some decks that Star Compass can be a good fit for. First up, there's Niv-Mizzet Perrin, which has some really intense mana requirements. The fact that Star Compass can tap for either blue or red is huge. And in monocolor decks like Atali Primal Storm, Star Compass works great as well, because in those decks, it's essentially just another copy of Fire Diamond. And a mana rock like Star Compass works great in something like an Artifact Storm deck like Joyra as well. A mana rock that costs 2 and has the potential to tap for any of your colors is a huge deal. It doesn't belong in every single deck, but it definitely deserves to see more play than it's getting. And finally, let's take a look at our last Quest Recorders card, which is actually 2 cards. Both Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving are the exact same card. There are sorceries that cost 3 and a black, and they say you draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. Like I mentioned before, drawing cards is a crucial component to Commander, and 4 mana for 3 cards is a very good rate. And since you start at 40 life, losing 3 life is nothing. Now, black has plenty of great draw options, but these cards are still very underplayed. They may be simple cards, but they're very efficient. But now let's take a look at some cards that we can compare these to. First up, there's Siphon Mine, which is also a sorcery that costs 3 and a black. It says each other player discards a card, you draw a card for each card discarded this way. So essentially this is also drawing you 3 cards for 4 mana. On top of that, you're not losing any life and you're making each of your opponents discard a card. Now most of the time it's gonna work that way. But if your opponents don't have hands, or some of them are dead, this is much less effective. Both Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving guarantee that you get those cards. Siphon Mine has a higher upside but no such guarantee. A similar card at an even better rate is Night's Whisper. It's a sorcery that costs 1 and a black and it says you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Now this is along the same lines of Sign in Blood, but it's easier to cast and you can't target an opponent with it. Regardless, Night's Whisper is extremely effective. It needs to see a lot more play than it is. It's more efficient than both Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving, but that still doesn't mean those aren't good cards. Finally, let's compare this to Read the Bones, which is probably one of the most popular black draw spells. It's a sorcery for 2 and a black. It says scry 2, then draw 2 cards, you lose 2 life. So basically it's a Night's Whisper that costs 1 more, but it lets you scry 2 first. Now there's a lot of debate on whether that scry 2 is worth that extra mana, but still it's a very effective draw spell. In comparison to Ancient Craving and Ambition's Cost, you don't get that scry 2, but for just 1 extra mana, you do get 1 more card. You also lose 1 more life, but again, that's nothing in Commander. Both Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving deserve a lot more respect than they're getting. So let's just take a quick look at some decks that could use these cards. Mono black decks like Gonti are a great place to start. They're effective and efficient draw spells that can keep you going, but they can even be effective in a 3-color deck like Edgar Markov or a 2-color deck like Selenia Dark Angel. When it comes to colors that are very effective at drawing, black is pretty much up there with blue. So when you don't have blue in your deck, you're probably going to lean on black when it comes to card draw. And both Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving are fantastic and efficient draw spells. They're not the best draw spells in black, but they definitely should be considered in more decks than they are. And if you haven't seen my last Quest for Quarters episode, make sure you check it out here. And with that, our show is coming to a close, but I really want to hear about your thoughts on these picks, so why don't you let me know in the comments below. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Links to our social media accounts can be found in the description. Also in the description below is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future Commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. I truly couldn't do this without all of your support, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget Commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.